So Frank, thank you so much for sharing insight presentation today at BIOCHINA 2026. So before we start, could you briefly introduce yourself and your company, GSCA?
Yes, so I have been active in supply chain management and manufacturing in the pharma and biopharma sectors for quite some time. I've been at both Swiss big pharma companies, Roche and Novartis, spent also time at Accenture as management consultant. And in my last two companies, I had the opportunity to actually lead the supply chain organizations. For Celgene, I built up the international supply chain outside of US. And for Santen, I was leading the global supply chain, basically all of worldwide activities in the pharma sector. And now, after these years spent with other companies, I have my own company. So I'm offering my experience and my expertise for companies who want to grow and develop their global supply chains, especially pharma and biopharma company, but also service providers such as forwarders or logistics service providers.
Fantastic. And today you highlight the very important things. So first, I want to ask you, so when designing a supply chain for global success, what is the biggest mindset shift a company need to make?
I think it's important to realize that the whole framework you have been operating under is really the national framework. And if you go outside, you need to adjust to completely different frameworks, different laws, different settings, different pricing and payment and so on. And also you have to have adjust to a different way of doing business in the first place. So you have to understand that the world outside is different from your own country, but it can be managed if you are aware of that.
And also you highlighted the flow of product, information, and money. So why is it so important to design all three together?
Yeah, these flows are really, they have to happen together in a synchronized way. You cannot dissociate the flow of information and the flow of product and the flow of money. You have to consider them as fitting together.
Right.
Flow of information, that is maybe the most easy. You can share information wherever you want, but you have to make sure that the commercial transactions are initiated and done the right way. And for the flow of money, you also need to have corresponding flows of products. Everything has to be traceable. Everything has to be explainable. And if you do not design it from the beginning with all these flows in mind, it's very likely that you end up in a suboptimal network.
Frank, you also mentioned that supply chain design should start as early as the clinical development stage. And why is early planning so important?
There are some really fundamental decisions, especially the choice of the manufacturing sites. And well, in pharmaceuticals, but even more in biomanufacturing, it is very, very hard to later change these site decisions. And if these kind of decisions are made just from a clinical perspective, without thinking about the commercial future, then it's quite likely that it will not be the right decision. It might be that a site is chosen that doesn't have the right capacity to support the growth of the product, or it might be a site that turns out to be not the right site from a perspective of optimizing the supply chain, optimizing the overall profit contribution. And it's super important that supply chain gets involved early on. Very often companies, sometime in phase 3, they go to their supply chain guys and say, here, that's our new product, take care of it. But most of the costs and a lot of the performance of the supply chain is actually determined way before with these decisions of manufacturing sites. So supply chain should be involved from phase 2 onwards.
And now cell and gene therapy, clinical trials are growing, and it's much more challenging, right?
It is more challenging, and on one hand, the complexity of supply chain, especially when we talk about autologous cell and gene therapy, grows. It's a different dimension. and also the conduct of the clinical trials and also of the treatment has a interlinkage between supply chain and manufacturing that is unlike anything else we have. So for cell and gene therapy, it is really essential to do it together with supply chain early on.
So have to think about cold chain as well.
Yes, cold chain extremely important. If supply chain is involved in the phases of product development, it's maybe even possible to achieve better stability or a longer shelf life, which will make a huge difference for the supply chain complexity and cost. In any case, it's really important to have supply chain colleagues involved in development.
Frank, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience.
Pleasure.
And it's lovely to meet you in China. And I'm also looking forward to meeting you in Korea as well.
Yes, looking forward to that as well. Bye.